What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about one of the biggest changes in the world of spellcasting, and that is all about casting and how many spells you can cast per turn. Now, if you recall, we had caveats on how you could cast multiple spells in a turn back in 2014, essentially limiting if you cast a spell as a bonus action, you could only cast a cantrip, right? That was basically where you were at. If you cast a spell as an action, you could still cast a spell as a reaction on that turn, allowing counterspell chaining and things. And the previous 2014 version of Action Surge allowed you to cast an additional spell. However, that has since been changed. Action Surge now specifies you cannot use the magic action with Action Surge, and reminder that utilizing magic items that cast spells is also covered under part of the magic action. So that's not a thing anymore. You can't do that. But there's a massive change, which I do think I actually improve. I think this is an improvement. I think this is easier to understand as opposed to like bonus action, blah, blah, blah. But what if I'm taking an action spell and casting it as a bonus action as a sorcerer or whatever the case may be? That has since changed drastically with this one little update that you'll see on screen in just a second, right over here. It is now one spell slot, casting with a spell slot once per turn. So as it says here, right, you can only expend one spell slot to cast a spell. This means you can't, for example, cast a spell with a spell slot using the magic action and another one using a bonus action on the same turn. So now, why is that important? That wording is critical. So, first of all, cantrips probably the easiest way to think about. Cantrips don't expend a spell slot. So you're free to cast cantrips, whether they're bonus action cantrips or action cantrips, and you're casting a bonus action spell or an action spell. You're free to do that as you see fit, right? As you always kind of could. However, it's one spell with a spell slot. And I'm sure those of you who already have your gears turning that there are a variety of different ways, from species traits, subclass features, or probably the biggest one, magic items, that allow you to cast spells without expending a spell slot. So, for example, if you are a tiefling, right, and you have the ability to cast Burning Hands, let's say. I don't even know if that's an option that tieflings have, but whatever. Your species grants you the ability to cast Burning Hands as an action. You could, I'm sorry, it allows you to cast Burning Hands once per long rest without using a spell slot, and then you can obviously cast it with slots that you have, right? We see that a lot. There are a lot of different species that have the ability to get like a one-off spell without expending a spell slot. Well, that's the key point there, right? Without expending a spell slot. Meaning I could bonus action Misty Step and then do that spell because the spell slot that I cast was, the bonus action was my Misty Step, and then my action could be my spell. Or better yet, there are several different subclasses, and I believe even some species that have the ability to cast Misty Step without expending a spell slot. So I could Misty Step as a bonus action, not spending a spell slot, and then still have my full action to cast whatever spell I wish. And then again, some of the bigger ones would be any magic item that duplicates the effect of a spell, right? So if you have a wand of fireball, you don't use a spell slot to cast a wand of fireball. You expend a charge from the wand of fireballs to cast a fireball, therefore giving you your bonus action to do that. The cartomancy feat from the Book of Many Things that basically lets you attach a spell to a card. When you cast it, you're using it from that card. The card is casting the spell. You're not using a spell slot at that point. The other one is scrolls, right? Casting a spell from a spell scroll does not expend a spell slot. So scrolls just became infinitely more powerful in their utility because you can cast a spell from a scroll, not expend a spell slot, and then still be able to spend a spell slot on your turn. Again, I think this is probably easier to understand, especially for newer players, as opposed to the whole like action versus bonus action versus um, reaction and things, right? If you're going to cast something like Counterspell, right? It is on a turn, you can expend only one spell slot to cast a spell. So again, in theory, if you were going to counterspell and, or say you're using older rules or whatever the case may be, you're going to counterspell. That's a spell with a spell slot on a turn. You know what I mean? So I think it's just probably ultimately easier to understand the way they've worded it, but it does allow some very interesting shenanigans by allowing folks to dual cast spells in ways they couldn't before. It also is nice because it takes some of those class features, like for example, like the Archfey Warlock has access to like a million different ways to cast a variety of Misty Step, along with things like I think it was the Eladrin and the Shatterkai and all these other elven-based species that have access to teleports or Misty Step that will now allow them to do that and something else on their turn. So I think this is, like I said, a general improvement. It is a little bit of power creep in that you can kind of get potentially more access to this, right? If you're an Aberrant Mind sorcerer and you can cast your spells from your Aberrant Mind, psionic spells feature using sorcery points, that doesn't expend a spell slot. Therefore, you could do that and then still have access to other things as a bonus action by using Quicken Spell, and that's all baked into that one particular sorcerer's kit right out the gate. So, yeah, I just wanted to call attention to this. This is one that I picked up on pretty early myself that I think has been making its rounds, and I'd love to hear some of the really crazy combo ideas you all have in the comments down below. So, anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.